Welcome to Animate Bible Stories channel. In today's Bible story you will discover the dramatic and emotional story of Absalom's rebellion against King David. A long time ago, in the great kingdom of Israel, there was a king named David. He was a mighty warrior, a wise ruler, and a man after God's own heart. But even though he loved God and his people, his family had many problems. One of his sons, Absalom, grew angry and decided to rebel against his own father. This is the story of how Absalom's rebellion almost took away David's throne. Let's dive in. 1. Absalom, the handsome prince. Absalom was one of King David's sons, and he was the most handsome man in all of Israel. The Bible says, "From the top of his head to the sole of his feet, there was no blemish in him." 2 Samuel 14 verse 25. Absalom had long, thick hair that everyone admired. Every year, he would cut his hair, and it was so heavy that people would wear it. But even though he looked perfect on the outside, inside his heart, he was filled with anger and pride. 2. The root of bitterness, Absalom's hatred. Absalom had a sister named Tamar, and she was very beautiful. Their half-brother Amnon, another son of David, did something very terrible to Tamar. When Absalom found out, he was filled with rage, but he didn't do anything right away. He waited for 2 years, planning revenge. One day, Absalom invited all the king's sons to a feast. While they were eating and drinking, Absalom gave a secret order to his servants: "Strike Amnon down." 2 Samuel 13 verse 28. As soon as the servants obeyed, Amnon was killed. The other princes ran away in fear. When King David heard what had happened, he was heartbroken. Absalom knew that his father would be angry, so he ran away to a far country called Geshur. He stayed there for 3 years. 3. Absalom returns to Jerusalem. King David missed Absalom very much. One of David's officials, Joab, saw this and came up with a plan to bring Absalom back. He sent a wise woman to tell the king a story that helped him understand that Absalom should return. So, David allowed Absalom to come back to Jerusalem, but he refused to see him for 2 years. This made Absalom even more angry. He wanted attention, so he set Joab's field on fire. Finally, Joab spoke to King David, and David allowed Absalom to come before him. When Absalom bowed before his father, David kissed him. But even though they were reunited, Absalom's heart was still not right. He was planning something very dangerous. 4. Absalom's deception, winning the people's hearts. Absalom wanted to be king instead of his father. He began a clever plan to steal the hearts of the people. Every day, he stood near the city gate where people came to ask the king for help. He would stop them and say, "The king is too busy to listen to you, but if I were the judge in the land, I would give you justice." 2 Samuel 15 verse 4. The people began to love Absalom because he acted like he cared for them. He shook their hands and hugged them, making them feel important. After 4 years of doing this, Absalom was ready to betray his father. 5. Absalom declares himself king. One day, Absalom told his father that he wanted to go to Hebron to worship God. But that was a lie. He actually went there to declare himself king. Absalom sent messengers all over Israel, saying, "When you hear the trumpet sound, say, 'Absalom is king in Hebron.'" Many people followed Absalom, thinking he was the rightful king. Even one of David's advisors, Ahithophel, joined him. When King David heard the news, he was very sad. He knew that his son was trying to take his throne. 6. King David flees from Jerusalem. Instead of fighting, David chose to leave the palace. He gathered his servants and followers and fled Jerusalem. As he walked, he wept, covering his head in sorrow. Many people who loved David followed him. Among them was a man named Hushai, who wanted to help David. David told him to go back to Absalom and pretend to be on his side. This was part of God's plan to confuse Absalom's advisors. 7. The advice of Ahithophel and Hushai. When Absalom entered Jerusalem, he asked his advisors what to do next. Ahithophel, his main advisor, told him to attack David immediately, but Hushai, David's secret supporter, gave a different plan. Your father is a mighty warrior. If you attack now, you will lose. Gather all of Israel first, then strike. God made Absalom listen to Hushai instead of Ahithophel. This gave David time to prepare. 8. The final battle, Absalom's defeat. David and his army prepared for battle. He told his commanders, "Be gentle with the young man Absalom for my sake." The battle took place in the Forest of Ephraim. David's army was winning, and Absalom's soldiers ran away. As Absalom was riding his mule, his long hair got caught in the branches of a tree. The mule kept going, but Absalom was left hanging. When Joab heard this, he took 3 spears and struck Absalom, killing him. 9. King David's sorrow. When David heard that Absalom was dead, he was heartbroken. He cried out, "Oh my son Absalom! If only I had died instead of you." David loved his son even though Absalom had rebelled. Conclusion: a lesson for us. Absalom's story teaches us important lessons. 1. We must not let anger and bitterness control us. Absalom's hatred led to destruction. 2. We should always obey and respect our parents. Absalom disobeyed his father and suffered for it. 3. God is always in control. Even when people try to do evil, God's plan will always succeed. King David continued to rule Israel, but he never forgot the pain of losing his son. That is the story of Absalom's rebellion against King David. What do you think we can learn from this story? Share your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing Bible stories.